Beyond the Threshold. Jesus elucidates through Jacob Lorber. Scene 4. A spoiled, lazy, vain, and amoral dandy is dying. August 5th, 1847. This is the final hour and the early death of a dandy, who, apart from smoking tobacco, gambling, eating, drinking, courting all the better-looking females, and being an excellent dancer and player of waltzes on the grand piano, for the sake of this beautiful world, of course, did not know much else, although he had spent almost all his time at colleges and universities. The dandy demonstrated here was the son of rather wealthy parents, who, of course, allowed their promising, enormously spoiled son to take up all sorts of studies as soon as he had mastered the ABC. So that the tender boy would not do too badly while learning the difficult Latin language, he was given into a good boarding house, where he had plenty to eat and could grow. However, not in wisdom and in favor with God and men, but only in body. And so that he should not waste away with all this diligent learning, he was allowed to repeat each year in case he could not finish a grade in 1 year, naturally in the easiest manner. For this purpose, the professors, particularly in the lower grades, were heavily bribed, and for every subject, a good-hearted instructor was taken on. In this way, our student narrowly made it through the lower grades. Only his head benefited little or nothing in this manner. As a consequence, he continually failed to pass in the higher grades. And since he had no great liking for learning, he applied himself mainly to the above-mentioned free arts, namely smoking, gambling, eating, drinking, etc. Having gone through his studies and passed with merely passing marks, he tried his hand in lawyers' offices, but the air, reeking of paper and ink, did not agree with him. He was always given so much money by his mother that he could live the life of a gentleman even without a lawyer's office. At the same time, he courted all the daughters of better houses and proposed to many, so that, with all the prospects of matrimony held out to them, many a sweet girl ended up expecting without the bond of marriage. Apart from these beauties, whom he instilled with disagreeable but living hope, our government official also favored other females, whom he could have at any time for little money, without the promise of marriage and the fear of impregnating these beauties. And so it sometimes happened that he was infected with syphilis in all degrees, finally so much so that even the most experienced doctors in this field could no longer help him. The consequence of this disorderly conduct was a general withering of the natural vital juices, a malady for which I, the Lord, during the creation of the world, alas, had completely neglected to create a healing herb. And so our dandy, nolens volens, had to prepare himself for death. Certainly a rather disagreeable procedure for a fashionable man such as him, one who loved the world and its sweet pleasures. But, as it so happens, everyone must go the way of the flesh. And finally even this dandy, whose greatest earthly bliss was the flesh, was all the more forced to walk the true way of the flesh. Now gaze upon his reeking bed, where he twists and turns, gasping for air and water. But he is no longer able to get any into his stomach, for all the ligaments of his gullet are dried out and unable to draw even a single drop of water into the stomach. His breath is short and painful, the lungs being almost completely dry. his voice is quite broken as well. He is only able to utter a few strained, half-expressed words, the sound of which like that of a bassoon in the hands of a pupil. And although he attempts to curse like a dandy and to stammer a few learned phrases from Voltaire or Sir Walter Scott, the general draught of his system will not allow it, and the severe pains in all his vital parts do not leave him the time to even concentrate his thoughts on a single point. And thus he lies there, gasping, only sometimes uttering a piercing, rasping bassoon sound from his entirely dried out throat. You see, this is how the end of such libertines often turns out in this world. However, since there is nothing more to be observed with this dandy in this world, and, as you express it, death is about to claim him any moment now, we will turn at once to the beyond and see how our man will arrive there. Behold, his bed is exactly like the one he had in the world. He still lies there, just as before, but at the same time you see by his bed only a single angel, carrying with him a flaming torch, destroying the dandy's last vital drops with its spiritual flame. The reason why there is only one angel with such people is because their soul and spirit are completely dead. Only the angel of death, governing the flesh and the nerve spirit, is here to torment and burn both, thereby collecting the scattered remnants of the soul and the equally scattered spirit back into the nerve spirit, and in this way keeping the dying person from eternal death. He, the angel, will not speak to this man, only burning him with his torch from the natural world into the spirit world. This is commonly done, and must be done with such people, for without this final act of grace, they would lose their being entirely. This act is akin to the distorted pagan act in the fable of Prometheus. For the more spiritual, primordial people observed such performances in the spirit world, which, to be sure, were indescribably rarer than during this time, which is far more sensual than even Sodom and Gomorrah. So, a few of their fables survived, only distorted beyond measure after a few thousand years. Here, the same Prometheus appears as he acted in reality. But look, now the solitary angel has brought his work to a good end. The flesh of our dandy is burnt to ashes through and through, and observe, out of the ashes, slowly and idly, not a glorious, rejuvenated phoenix. Oh no, but look, only a silly monkey, appearing like an old, decrepit baboon, is rising. He is quite dumb, but he can see a little. The animal form is due to the fact that such people, throughout the course of their life of debauchery, completely waste the finer particles of their human soul through their lust, retaining only the coarser animal ones. In this case at least, the monkey soul remained, but there are others who have spoiled themselves down to the ugliest of amphibians. With this man, the water of his life cannot be determined as yet, for he must now, as you say, go to pasture. There he will be handed over to spirits who are placed in charge of such degenerated animal souls. Perhaps they will achieve that, with all diligence, and in 100 years perhaps, this soul will once again attain a human form. There is nothing more to be said about this soul. Therefore, we shall move on to another example.